Hello and welcome to HDI's Support World Virtual. We're excited that you're joining us today for Ask the Experts, What's Next in Service and Support? HDI, Smarter Service, Better Business. I'm Andrew Gillum, Associate Analyst at HDI, and I have a few housekeeping announcements before we begin. If you experience any technical problems, please refresh your browser. I encourage you to ask questions at any time during this webcast. This is a panel that is to answer your questions, so please send those in. Click on the Q&A tab in your BrightTalk window, and we'll answer as many as we can during today's panel. Today's discussion will be available on demand shortly after the completion of our live event. You will receive an email reminder as soon as it becomes available. And I'd like to say thank you to EasyVista for sponsoring today's virtual event. And with that, we have a representative from EasyVista with us. Evan Carlson joined EasyVista in 2010 as one of the first employees in North America. He is currently the Chief Revenue Officer responsible for growth and profitability across marketing, sales, services, support, and customer success. Evan previously held positions where he was responsible for ITSM and self-help go-to-market strategies, customer acquisition and expansion, and partner enablement. He has presented at various conferences, webinars, and HDI local chapters. Before EasyVista, Evan held leadership roles for technology vendors, including OpNet, Optinuity, acquired by CA Technologies, and Visual Networks, acquired by Danaher Corporation. Thank you, Evan, for being here, and thank you to EasyVista for sponsoring today. I understand you have a few things you want to share before we begin.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. Really appreciate it. It's our 11th year at HDI, first time virtual, obviously, and just want to thank everybody for joining. I know it's towards the end of the day, but I think we've got some really interesting stuff to cover. Back to you, Andrew.
Wonderful. Thank you. And next up, we have Ben Brennan, the author of Badass IT Support, founder and CEO of QStack, and inventor of the QStack metric for IT customer experience. Ben doesn't just throw around the term world-class support. He invented a tool to define, measure, and deliver it at some of the country's leading tech firms, including Twitter, Yahoo, Box, Jawbone, and most recently as Senior IT Director for Verizon Media. Ben has earned a reputation for bringing a mind-blowing customer centricity to the heart of IT culture at companies worldwide, and he was named by HDI as a top 25 thought leader and featured contributor for 2020. And we also have Chris Chagnon, who is an ITSM application and web developer who designs, develops, and maintains award-winning experiences for managing and carrying out ITSM processes. Chris has a Master's of Science in Information Technology and is currently a PhD candidate studying information systems with a focus on user and service experience. As one of HDI's top 25 thought leaders, Chris speaks nationally about the future of ITSM, practical applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning, gamification, continual service improvement, and customer service and customer experience. Thank you all for being here today. It's great to have you for this discussion.
Totally. Thanks, man.
So I want to kick off our discussion by sort of acknowledging why we're doing a virtual event right now instead of an in-person event. We've had a lot of disruption to our daily lives lately. What role do you think that IT support plays or should play in disaster preparedness and emergency management? Chris, would you like to kick that off?
Absolutely. So I work in higher education. I'll keep the hands up here. We can see them. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that IT has become increasingly more important. We were always seen as an enabler. People like higher ed. We allow online learning, things like that. But we were always seen as kind of a cost center. Love it or hate it, we do cost money. Good IT costs money. Good services and support also cost money. So to be able to enable all of that remotely, all of a sudden we became very important. So in disaster recovery, I think IT needs to be seen as a strategic asset, but then also as a huge enabler for all of those things. It's not just about the actual infrastructure, the software, what are you using to do your virtual meetings, organize work and things like that. It's also about the services you're offering and how you might need to modify those beyond it. So IT needs to start thinking both about the people and that technology. And I think as we've seen, I don't think a single company doesn't appreciate their IT right now.
Totally. Yeah, I kind of want to agree with Chris. It's this is where IT teams lead, and even if you 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago had the reputation of just being a cost center, you're now hopefully seen as providing a competitive advantage. Because when we talk about disaster now, we're talking about digital disaster, and we are information technology. So it's not just facilities or HR or whatever. It's us. So this is a good time to lead. And I just remember, it's kind of always been that case. We don't always have a big disaster, but I remember I was running IT for a small firm called Hack Reactor, and we didn't want to do disaster recovery because all startups want to be cute and different. So we did disaster avoidance, and we were just like, how do we as a small company avoid disaster? So we thought of everything that could go wrong, and then we accounted for it, including even to the point where we had something called backup internet, which we had for a year, and it finally came into effect. What happens when they're doing a demo work on one of the floors in your building, and one of the construction guys cuts the cable runs? Backup internet. We would literally everything went out. We went to the box, plugged in an Ethernet cable, and the students were able to do their presentations for their folks. So this is not that it's a good thing, but it is an opportunity to just lead by example. And I'd encourage everyone to go home and think about everything that could possibly go wrong, which, if you're anxious like me, is easy to do, and then come up with a solution, and hopefully that'll save the day and help your company.
Yeah, I think the current pandemic, in a way, for IT, it's somewhat of an opportunity, because you're always talking about aligning with the business, proving value to the business, and obviously, none of this happens, none of this is running. Businesses aren't still working without IT, and I think that's pretty obvious. One of the things that I thought was pretty cool, Associated Press had an article about the NFL draft. So they took it, virtual. Obviously, all those guys couldn't be there in person. And the article really talked about the heroes of the draft, which were the IT teams that were working. Each team has their own IT, and setting up all the services at the coaches, multiple coaches, and owners' location, whether it was on the owner's yacht or in the coach's home, and they crushed it. They really did. It was seamless, and the article was great. It talked about all kinds of things that went wrong, but as a viewer, I saw a little bit of it. I didn't notice any of that because IT did such a great job. So it's been an opportunity for IT to step up. I think in large part, they have. It's been pretty fantastic.
Awesome. I want to circle back to something that you said a second ago, Ben, about leading by example. Even when we're back in the office and have resumed kind of our standard, whatever our standard operations look like when we go back, how do you lead by example? And I think this also plays into the idea of enterprise service management, trying to get other parts of the organizations to adopt our processes. What tips do you have for building those relationships and becoming trusted to give that kind of advice?
I can tell you what I did wrong terribly and what I did right. A lesson I learned the hard way is I'm notorious in the organizations I worked for getting stuff done. They were like, Brennan, get stuff done. But to be honest, because there's a lot of friction to get stuff done, I stepped on some toes that made it harder at some companies for me to collaborate with my peers. Or when you get promoted and get to the executive level and you're like, oh, this is my peer, and he, is not crazy about me. So relationships, number one. We have to remember that you're people, and even if it's the right thing for the company, if someone doesn't like you, they're not going to help you. So, I think you guys are a lot more charming than me, so probably don't have a problem with that. But oh no, but that's one thing. But number two, if you get over that basic step, I think it goes without saying, but I lose my mind whenever people say, that's not our job. That's facilities. That's HR. That's recruiting. If you're waiting for another internal service to do the right thing, you might be waiting a long time, and I really have seen, because IT, and not to crap on those those services, but internal services, out of all of us, out of recruiting and HR and all the enterprise internal services, IT is the one that has access to so much more. And, most of the solutions are digital. So really leading by example and saying proactively, not saying, oh, HR sucks, but hey, would you like to meet with our sysadmin here and work on some automation to automate onboarding, and like providing value that way. But if you're waiting for other people to do something, you have to step outside of your role if you really want to be good. And I think you guys would agree, every world-class team I've seen has not just been good at IT, but they've been good at HRIS. They've been good at facilities. They've shown up and say, whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. And I think that's the attitude to combine with not being a jerk. That's my advice.
I think building off of that, one of the biggest things that we learned is we've had this vision for enterprise service management for a while, but it's been very hard to get buy-in. Then all of a sudden, campus is closed and people say our inboxes are really hard to manage. So there's certain departments out there who we'd already been talking to, facilities, HR, those are the ones that they tell you to talk to. But like the office of the registrar, they manage all course registrations, ads, drops, tons of things. They're a really good model. Those groups like that started to come out of the woodwork. We also created these virtual groups, literally one called Virtual. It was, who do I ask questions about this new virtual environment that exists? Well, there's no department on campus called the Office of Virtual Studies or something like that. So a group from our undergraduate studies division decided to start working with us. We started seeing really cool things like that. And you get to really just consume and feed their energy. So instead of just saying like, yeah, we have a ticketing system, here's the login, good luck. We started to be able to work on their individual workflows, customizing it, realizing that we can't just like, yeah, that's a ticket, you just do it. The Office of the Registrar does not work the same way as IT. They actually schooled us really quickly on certain things. Like our auto responses were very IT. They were very much like, you've entered a ticket, good luck. Just kidding. It's like you've entered a ticket, the incident number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and things like that. And they said, if somebody's having a crisis about their grades or something like that, we don't want them to say like, I'm having a crisis and go, you've been assigned an incident. So we had to eat some humble pie as we grew and started learning some of these, but it's actually allowed us to start stretching out. So you make this one good example and you say, this group wasn't on our radar, but now they're in there. We hope they're liking it. And then this other group goes, we heard you got IT, service management. And then you become the ESM dealer on campus and you've kind of almost elevated your station as well to be able to help these people. And that's been really cool about this whole process is I wish we didn't have to do this, but it's been great to be able to start working with people, help them with their processes. We've been able to make our centralized service support portal much stronger. Instead of being an IT one, we actually rebranded it as the hub. You have to do the hands though, otherwise it doesn't count. And we've been able to say, this is where you go for all stuff. And now it starts to become really easy for our users to get help, which is going back to the point you said is, how am I supposed to know where to submit that ticket or things like that? And they don't need to. They submit the ticket and it finds its way to the right people.
Yeah, I think it helps to proactively try to bridge the gap from IT to different groups. And naturally, different organizations have different affinities for different, business units within the same organization. And wherever you can start is a good place to start, to be quite honest. I mean, the fact is that what we've seen a lot of over the last few years, is certainly a greater focus on just the user experience. It's a focus for IT, it's a focus for HR, it's a focus for the entire organization. It was 6 months ago or so, there was a major concern for most organizations around retention because the job market was so hot and people were competing for the same talent and outbidding and stealing people. And obviously things are a little bit different now, but at the end of the day, that really drove a lot of kind of the employee-centric experiences, moving from an IT-centric self-service portal like Chris is talking about to a hub that says, hey, well, let me see if I can service that employee, that person on a more, intimate context-aware level where they need, they might need stuff beyond just from IT, other pieces. It also is going to benefit that other department in terms of bringing us all together and automating across the board. And I'd also say that, that's something that I would expect should continue going forward, right? I think that the personalization of service is extremely key to proving the value of IT. It's one thing to show metrics. Hey, we're meeting our SLAs to the business. It's another thing to to provide really on point communication to your customers, so they walk away with a kind of an emotionally rewarding experience. And one of the things internally we just had a conversation about on Monday with the leadership team was, I think the team's doing a good job on support, saying thank you. Honestly, just on little communications, it goes a long way, and please, can you provide me this information, rather than from a tech perspective, sometimes it's really quick and just, to the point, give me this, I need this to troubleshoot and to resolve. So those little things that really make a big difference.
Wonderful, thank you. So just a quick little announcement. There are some folks who are reporting some audio feedback issues. If you are still having those, just refresh your browser, and that normally fixes it. We've checked that from our end here. And then we have a question from the audience, and we are watching these audience questions. So if you have questions, send them in using that Q&A tab, and we will get to as many as we can. The first one is, I also work in higher ed. We're a small team, but we handle all aspects of our facility. How do we make sure that after things are back to the new normal, that those in charge understand that we are not high value only during a pandemic? What do you all think about that?
I think you have to keep showing your value as part of it. But the biggest thing that I've kept saying this whole process is, awesome, we have the Office of the Registrar. We're talking about all these other groups in there. They need support going forward. Their needs are going to continue to grow, and it's awesome that we can provide unified centralized support through ESM. But we now have to support a whole university. This is now an enterprise product. So for us, just making sure that that messaging is clear right now while you are in panic mode, that some of these things you brought online, it's defining those services that you're providing and defining what those configuration items and things are for those services. So you might have Zoom, for example, and you've scaled up your Zoom operation to a professional enterprise account. I don't know what their billing process looks like, but the idea is, let's say you've scaled it up to this big enterprise thing, and then things go back to normal and you don't need it as much. You need to be able to start defining that stuff now to say, what are the things that we scaled up? How do we continue to support them? And by defining them early, you can say, this is really what we need to keep supporting it, and if we want to deliver this service.
Yeah, something that I think really gets, right now we're in a situation where we know what people need, in a sense that, like, all anyone talks about, all I've talked about on my 10 meetings today was COVID, right? That's all everyone's talking about right now. So you're like, okay, we need to handle the new normal. In normal time, though, how do you know what people really need? The reason, like this question says, that, the all aspects of our faculty are being taken care of, and in the new normal, like, it's the same thing as the old normal as far as providing value. And how do you measure it? I guess that's the big thing that I've seen with IT teams. They have a dashboard of 27 metrics, all super helpful and really great. But if you do the math, do they really directly correlate to a positive, customer experience? If you want to be, high value to your, in the new normal, to the business or to the faculty or whoever you see yourselves as reporting to, let's measure that, and make that at least one of your top 3 metrics. And I think so many people I talk to, they want to be customer centric all the time, but I'm like, well, cool. How do you define that? Well, white glove service. Okay, that's a great buzzword, but like, how do you define that? How do you measure that? I don't know. Well, if you don't measure it, chances are you're leaving some ideas on the table that you could do. So don't be afraid to make your main, if this is working for you, if this customer centric focus during COVID is working for you, maybe say, hey, we're going to start measuring and making customer experience one of our top 3 metrics, maybe even more than first contact resolution or number of open versus closed tickets. And I think in my experience, just focusing and measuring it rather than using your opinion will speak volumes. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, to riff off what Ben just said, ultimately the best time to maybe have that conversation with the business is right now. You've saved them. You've said, you're online because I made it so. So let's have a conversation about what's important, through this period, which is going to last a bit longer, of course, right? And then afterwards, it's a great time to be able to have that conversation, because you are extremely valuable right now, and say, let's agree on how to measure it. If IT decides on how to measure it in a black box, it's not going to align with the business. They're probably not going to care as much.
And to the person in the audience right now, I can see you sitting there. You might not have metrics and KPIs yet. This is a really good time to start defining those. I know there's someone sitting there going, we don't have those yet. How do I make new ones if we don't even have the first ones? Now that I knock on wood, things are starting to slow down a bit, I hope. Start using this time to say, like, what were those moments? What were those big wins? And then define all those metrics we just talked about.
Great point. And I'm going to keep you on the spot, Chris, here, because I think we have another question that was sort of directed toward you. How do you handle integrating your service catalog and ticket submission process into a singular streamlined solution? How can that user experience be more streamlined? So what is your strategy and approach to a really great self-service portal?
There's some really, really good HDI blog posts that I've written about this, but I won't try to go into all that detail now, but those are out there. So some of the things that I like to think about is, you said customer experience, and that's really important there as you're thinking about that, and user experience. So when you're talking about the UX and the CX of this, start using some of those UX terms and tools. So do things like define personas for all of your different groups. That's where you look at your groups and you say, well, we have like freshman student, or we have the finance office. Let's say they're all a particular archetype or have similar needs for software and things like that. And then you can do what's called customer journey mapping, or even just simple process mapping, where you walk it through what you want that to be like. And it should be somewhat based on reality. You shouldn't just make it up in a bubble and then go, here we go, finance. I assume that you're a nerdy person that likes Excel. You can actually use this macro to submit your ticket in Excel. That might not work so well. It might, you don't know. You should talk to them. That's a pretty good start with that as you're developing those personas and walking them through these processes. But to make it holistic and have a unified self-service portal, I have a few models for that. One of them is no dead ends. So everyone should always have an out. What I like to say about that is, think about Wikipedia. When you're clicking it and then there's always one more link, you never reach the end of Wikipedia. Your self-service portal should be very similar. There should always be somewhere else for them to go. If they've gotten to a knowledge article and they really liked what they're reading, there might be related knowledge articles. Or let's say they're reading the knowledge article and they are so lost, maybe there's a submit a ticket button on that. It's this unified experience that you're creating for them that really helps that. And you can start to map out some of those use cases based on what those needs might be.
Yeah, and what Chris said is spot on. One other thing that I've seen growing in popularity, I think for good reason as well, is taking what Chris just mentioned and also doing that in an omni-channel way. So I still fully believe in the self-service portal. I think it's absolutely got its place. I think there's opportunities with technology to go well, not beyond that, but in addition to that. Because ultimately, what we found is that the launching of a self-service portal is a big deal, right? We've revamped it, we put a new one out, maybe we have multiple. There's different, theories behind that. But ultimately, it's a destination, right? Where somebody's simply trying to submit something or resolve something, oftentimes now on their own, right? It's still 86% is done with human interaction and 14% is automated. So that automated portion is small. But by omni-channel, what you do is you say, hey, at EasyVista, we always have Microsoft Teams up. It's up all the time, right? So that's a great place. If I need information, why go to a self-service portal if I can interact with a bot through Teams and perhaps get my answer, or even submit for access to an application or a service through Teams, through that bot service. And you can do that embedded within your ITSM tool. If you're on the support side, you can have your self-service portal through your Teams, Slack, doesn't matter, what have you, through your CRM, whether it's Salesforce. You can have that embedded in there in any website. So everything Chris covered, I think, is extremely critical. That's the right way to do it. There's just no question. It's not easy to get there. There's obviously a lot of work that goes into it. Chris knows that very well. I just think that the omni-channel, take on that, making sure wherever that user is, even on their phone, they can access and get to what they need as well.
Yeah, to both, basically to echo what you guys said, these things are The cool thing about what both Chris and Evan said, you don't have to come up with a way to do it or reinvent the wheel. The consumer industry has already figured this stuff out. And so like the omni-channel stuff, you don't be like, oh, like how do we design how the world uses omni-channel? No, it's already there. And very often, especially what I love about IT, so many of us are like, you know, MBAs or artists or like, you know, robotics people or whatever. You might have a UX designer, you know, or want to be UX designer on your team that you can put them to work. Like not to plug anything, but Chris did a podcast that Spotcast with Roy for HDI that I listened to recently, and he talks a lot about maybe I should let you say it, but like about UX and applying these like basic like principles that our creative friends that we support use all the time, and it's amazing. Like I was like, oh yeah, like we don't have to figure out how to do this, and you can really up your game with that investment. So I would encourage people to listen to that HDI podcast, because it's I heard it and I was like, man, that's yeah, that would be way better than what I always did for the past 10 years. So plug for that.
Awesome. And for anyone who's curious, that is the Single Point of Contact podcast, Spotcast, with my colleague Roy Atkinson. You can listen to that on iTunes or SoundCloud. And Ben, I believe that you also were a guest on the Spotcast as well. Is that right?
Yes, but start with Chris's, because mine was just, you know, his was quality. Mine was, you know, a mercy guesting. No, I'm just kidding. Mine was that's great.
I have heard both of them, and they're both really good. So go and check those out. And then just one quick tip, and then I want to talk about people for a second. But someone in our audience is getting ready to launch a new service portal. How do you ensure the user a positive experience as you transition to that and introduce it into your environment? What are key areas to watch for? Just real quick thoughts.
Make it something that you want to use yourself. You have to show them the WIFM, the what's in it for me. If they don't have that, they're going to still call, they're still going to email. And then sometimes this one's a little harder, is you need to cut them cold turkey, not for the support. You don't want to create a bad support experience. Yeah. But if there's an old website, if there's old docs, if you're transitioning from a wiki, it needs to come down and redirect them to the new one. Because even now, we're on our second iteration of our brand new portal. People still find websites from 25 years ago that we didn't even know we still had. And they're like, well, I'm trying to create my account in Unix. And I'm like, what? You know?
Yeah, I think what I've also gotten feedback on is also the service catalogs being far too complicated. So way too many layers. I can't find anything, which drives me crazy, because I mean, search is there, right? So I hate clicking through stuff like that. I just prefer to search. But there's a lot of things like Chris talking about. I mean, just the user experience is critical. There's a way to measure the experience that I like a lot, the customer effort score, CES. So if it takes somebody, I think more than 2 clicks to do something, is kind of the general rule, you know, but if it does, then the level of effort for them to achieve whatever they're trying to do is too high. So look at the CES. I think it's a really cool metric, really powerful, because, you know, if it doesn't bug you, if you use it, it's not going to bug them.
I've got a way to cheat this too. It's a word that we don't use enough in IT, but if you bring it up and you make it happen, this will make whoever asked the question, your service portal, amazing. Test it with real people before you roll it out. And again, this is something that I say, it took me a long time to do it and I still forget to do it. But yeah, I took a design thinking course recently, and this really just put me in my place when it came to testing. And really just changing the way we think about it. You know, when you're designing we think, okay, let's design a self-service portal for our users. So designing things for people is a good start, but what's better is designing things with people. And while it's hard to show your work, what if, you know, 4 key stakeholders are in the room at the very beginning? It sounds like you're about to launch, but at the very beginning when you're planning it out. And then what if 1% of the company gets to take it for a spin and you look over the shoulder and watch the music? Much easier said than done, but I can tell you, like, as in IT, we all know what it's like to support a product that wasn't tested very well. So let's take our own medicine and test it. And I kid you not, like, people will show you stuff and you're like, Oh, damn it. Yeah, we need to probably go back, but early and often, man. And that's, you don't have to take a design thinking class to take that. But if you test it first, then you've got other people, praising it for you, and that's, and one pro tip, if you do enterprise support, we call it the EA mafia, but the executive assistants, get them on board early and often and just be like, hey, come here. Like, we're going to have a little happy hour. I know you're very busy, but can you just come take a look at this? And they'll look and they'll be like, yes, yes, no, 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 no. And if you respond to their feedback with something they like, they'll tell their executives. And then maybe the VP of engineering sends an email rather than IT announcing it. And then you're more of like a empowerer. So those are some pro tips that, again, I haven't always done, but I've learned over the years help a lot.
My small anecdote to add to that, I say, my boss is going to be embarrassed by this, but find yourself a Kevin. So that's the user who knows how to break stuff, just somehow. He's a really good manager because I will send him a link to a preview, and within 5 minutes of it, I broke it, and I'm like, can you reproduce that? Just no other user would ever find that click path, but he'll be like, well, if you click here, then here, and he's DaVinci coding it. You have no idea what he's doing, but you need one of those as well. Because as much as you cover that 90%, it's that 2% who do the off the beaten path that will really break it. You need those in your life. So I would say, what would Kevin do? You can say it too. I'm sure he'll like this.
That is awesome. So on that note, speaking of people, I want to pivot here for a second. And I know that there are a lot of IT professionals out there who are worried about their jobs, who were already worried about their jobs because the bots are coming for us. And now this. So what would you say to IT pros who are concerned about that? What can they do to put themselves in a good position right now? And I actually got a question from the audience a little earlier today. What tips do you have to help folks build their network and get connected with other people in the IT service and support industry? Ben, do you want to lead that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have an old saying that I take credit for, but did make up, which is be the CEO of your own career. And I've said that to my directs and sometimes their directs forever. No one, and I always try to explain this to them. I love my team, but even if I did nothing in my job but cared about my team, and I have 10 direct reports, each person's only getting 10% of my brain. So basically, no one is spending more time thinking about your career than you. So you can't just let it happen. You might have a friend and get lucky and get a few jobs, but you need to be entrepreneurial in this day and age. Like, there's no getting around it. It's, you get jobs through people. And yeah, I mean, I think just think about it's a Kevin Co. or whatever, your Kevin Corp, and your job is to, keep Kevin employed and pay for Kevin's kids and get Air Jordans and, do whatever you need to do. And when you think about it like that, you kind of see yourself less of your career happening to you and really be more aggressive. And I think the way, as far as like to build your network, this is something that is hard because IT is a really hard job. And at the end of the day, you kind of are tired and, it's hard to do, but you have to do it. And now it's hard, but like, if you're a Mac fanboy or fangirl, a lot of companies have meetups. You have to get to know other IT professionals. First of all, it's amazing because like you get all these great ideas from other people. And second of all, maybe someone has a great boss and your boss sucks and you want a new job. But it's like you said, it's really, Andrew, it's really great to think about that stuff now if we haven't already. And networking is not something that us as IT people are getting cooler, but all of us, I think, secretly are probably like a little introverted, nerdy. But that said, go out and meet somebody, join a group, join a meetup, and you have to get to know other people. There's no way to become amazing just in your black box, So I think I don't know how to do it. Maybe Chris and Evan can say how to do it, but I will say it is important.
So one of the elephants in the room is obviously try to attend HDI stuff. I know that sounds silly and it seems like kind of apropos, right?
That was a softball. I should have got that. Sorry, I missed that.
For networking and expanding my network, I definitely try to attend both of the big events. But then beyond that, there are also HDI local chapters. As a local chapter officer, I feel like I should mention that. And a lot of those local chapters are kind of moving to a virtual space or on pause, depending on what region you're in because of COVID. But at the same time, look for those, look at the local chapter information, see what's going on there. But if you're not really feeling that scene or it's not for you, there are other things. So even though, as you said, a lot of IT people are nerdy or geeky or introverted, find that common ground. So I really like attending user groups for my ITSM tool. It's just a thing that happens quarterly for us, and we can all share that common ground of our tool. You have those things, here's the cool things I'm working on, here's the gripes I have, someone else can help you fix a problem, and then you can be social and talk to humans for a little bit. But to ask your question about what's going on with AI and robots and all that, I always tell people not to worry about that. All it's really doing is freeing us up to do the rest of the work that we're supposed to be doing. I mean, we're creating new jobs with people managing that, but then I don't know a lot of people in IT fields who are sitting around, who are first off working any less than 40 hours per week. I think in this field especially, people are all working 40, 50, 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours a week. Yeah, just getting things done. It's a passion. It's what people like to do. So it's an option, is to just keep doing your stuff and then let the robots sort themselves out. A lot of them are just math. That's all they are. Don't be afraid of math.
Yeah, well, I'll be real quick about it, but I really, what I've seen in HDI over the years since 2010 is really powerful. It's an awesome network of support professionals, very helpful to each other. I've seen people, lose jobs or what have you, and just the people in the local chapter help them out and hook them up. And I've seen that again and again and again. So it is a great organization to do that with. And there's others in your different, different fields. And I agree with what Chris said about, AI. There's a heck of a lot of marketing around it, and there's a lot of hype, and it is going to be cool. But if you were to ask your peer how much, I saw in the questions, machine learning, which is advanced AI compared to like a chatbot and NLP, not a lot of it is really deployed today. I think it's a great field to get into if you're interested, but from support services, you can also get into more customer centric, right? Like voice of the customer, customer journey mapping, that aspect of things, which is only going to continue to become and is already, extremely critical. Speaking the language of the business, right? Become that liaison between, the key business units and IT. There's just a lot of different directions you can go to remain extremely relevant, within your organization and still stay attached to IT, which is, obviously something you got into for a reason.
Thank you all. And I want to point out for the audience, I did not pay for this product placement. They said that on their own. But if you would like to connect with those local chapters and learn more about HDI or connect virtually, you can do that through our HDI Connect online community. If you go to thinkhdi.com and check that out, there are lots of ways to get connected. Also, you can search for those local chapters on social networks like LinkedIn. And I'm sure that all of our panelists, if you're looking for connections, all of our panelists would be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn and to follow on Twitter. So definitely check them out. And then we have a relay question that's come in, is for the introverts in the audience. How do we deal with having to go back to work after being home by yourself for months? This particular audience member enjoys being with one person, that is their dog.
I can kick that off.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Chris, just if you can prove that you are as productive, if not more so, which I think a lot of people can, working from home, then that's what you propose, and every organization is different. But I read recently that 74% of CFOs said that at least one position within the organization that had gone remote is going to stay remote going forward. So every organization is different. I've got a friend that works in Manhattan, and they've already said they're not going back into the office until January 1 at the earliest. But you got to ask to get. So I'd say, hey, I'm super productive here, aren't I? Can I continue working this way? And you might get the answer you want.
Chris or Ben, would you like to add
Sure,
anything to
just
that?
pretty much the same thing. Oh, there's the dog. He heard someone say dog, and he goes, "Don't mind me." So working from home is definitely an option, and I think a lot of organizations are exploring that. You've seen organizations like Twitter, I believe, go out there and say indefinitely, just work from home. That's going to cause huge, downstream cultural impacts, but let's not talk about those today. But if it's happening in your organization, you're a position that can be successful remotely. I'm sure a lot of organizations are going to evaluate that. But let's say you are a customer-facing position or support desk or something like that that really does, need to be there. It's one of those things where baby steps, wean yourself off of the being home. As things start opening up again, you can definitely try little things like next time you're in the grocery store, engage with a stranger. Remember what it was like to talk to humans in a non-transactional way. When you're allowed to have your mask off again, smile at someone. I'm an introverted extrovert. I love when I'm in a big crowd, but then I go and I recharge in secret for like 2 months. That's why I love HDI events, because I can just go to a big conference and have a lot of fun and then disappear from the face of the earth for a while. So I fully understand where you're coming from. But also, if it is a really big concern for you, talk to your leadership or management or supervisors and just say, like, is there a desk that might be in a darker corner away from people? I'll come out and do some work, but can we talk about this? It's been a while. I forget human contact,
Yeah, I think it's so I'm definitely an introvert, and I have worked from home often. I live in Delaware, very exciting place, so very often I'm telecommuting and dealing with folks. But if you have to go to the office, first of all, I think definitely be the change you want to see and try to advocate for that work from home policy. But if you can't, and we've all had bosses where they're just like not entertaining your ideas, take a walk, man. I mean, you've got colleagues that go out and smoke cigarettes. Definitely don't start smoking, but take that 10 minutes you would. It's okay to take a walk. And I guarantee you, like, if you start doing that and doing a little self-care, other people will too. But don't be like, you're not doing anyone any favors if you're supporting them when you're grumpy or just overwhelmed. Take a walk, go outside, Google like 5-minute meditation. But yeah, take care of yourself, because sometimes you can't control your environment. But yeah, I mean, you're twice as productive if you just go walk, take it easy, take some fresh air, and then come back. Like, don't be afraid to do that. And just tell your boss that if they're not attuned enough to figure that out. Be like, just so you know, I'm going to be really annoying if I don't take a walk, but I promise I'll be great if I come back. And just, set that as the new normal. And I bet you other people on the team will be like, yeah, we should probably not work, 9 hours through lunch, eating at our desk, helping people. It helps to do good. So a little self-care.
Awesome. Thank you all for that. And we were just discussing in the chat that one audience member had requested a hub diagram. I don't know that we'll get right into that on today's session, but if you reach out to Evan and on LinkedIn or something like that, I'm sure that he would be happy to send that to you. He has an example there.
I will say my HDI article that just came out has diagrams for that.
Wonderful. And thinkhdi.com as well. So that's great. And then while we're on the topic of people, I'm curious, what does onboarding and training look like in the social distancing era? And I think this question is applicable both for how we're training IT employees, but also how we're serving the business who's hiring employees who are going to need to be onboarded, introduced to IT. I'll let you kick that off then.
Yeah, I think, this is revealing, IT, we're very busy. We have a lot of projects, and a lot of us have, a folder in our intranet called like unfinished projects or deprecated projects, we like to say. But I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, a year and a half ago, didn't we talk about like remoting onboard users and how awesome it would be to just, have them open up a laptop and it pings the internet and downloads everything fresh? And a lot of people are having that moment like, yeah, I guess that would have been a good idea. So nothing you can do about it now, but, like that first or like that early question said about how can we, continue to show our value. Onboarding is so important. And it's very rare. I bet 99% of people on this call can think about their onboarding process and can think about ways it could be improved. Yes, this stuff can happen and it's going to be a mobile workforce. We all know that we should do this anyways. Like, just think about it and aim for perfection. Like, I think we get so used to being told, no, you can't do this. No, you can't have this feature of the MDM that allows your, phone to come already in the inventory. No, you can't have all this stuff. But yeah, you can do it. And I think a lot of us got caught with our pants down. So I think now is a great time to seize the opportunity and say, we need to do this now. Get some of that budget and put it in place, because it's I talk to a lot of leaders now that I'm not doing it. I'm more of working with other people. And a lot of people are like, yeah, we planned on doing that for 3 years and we never did. And now it turns out, it sucks. Yeah, you should be able to omni-channel communicate with people. You should be able to onboard anyone, anywhere, whether it's like a country like China where, you don't really trust the internet to begin with, like, and you have to use a Chromebook, or, anywhere. You should be able to do that. We're IT. If we're going to be IT in the year 2020, we need to be able to do that. So suck it up, get the budget, and make it happen. That's what I say.
So from my perspective, I think one of the things to actually think about there is something like knowledge management. So the training and the onboarding is really important, but expecting that employee or that new person to learn everything in one 1-hour session is unrealistic. So think about what those core things are, especially remote. If you have a 1-hour virtual meeting with them, where you're both on webcams, or you have 30 people and there's one trainer and you can't give them the individual attention because you're on a virtual setting, start to think about what are the core things you need to walk people through. Is it getting into the account, getting into their email, how to request things, how to find information, teach them into fish, all of that, teach them how to get to the information, how to enter a ticket, how to do all these things, maybe show them your portal, maybe show them if you have a chatbot in Teams, things like that, and let them kind of steer themselves. Give them that core information, but then make sure that you have enough of that information for them to find. Because that's even good if you were to cover that in the training, saying, here's how you do this. But if you don't have a document for them to refer back to, then they might not remember it, especially because you're probably orientation number 7 of the day. They had an HR one, a benefits one, a parking one, all these other things are going on. And by the time they get to you, they are just, overloaded with information.
Let me hop in real quick. And Chris said something that reminded me of an important thing. Again, the magic word, testing. I know, like, we are so busy in IT. When's the last time you sat through especially if you're a leader on this call, if you're a director or something, when's the last time you sat through new hire orientation on a Monday morning? Yeah, go to the remote things now and just do a rotation. Okay, you guys are in charge of onboarding, and 3 people every time, sit through that. And I think if you do it with fresh eyes, you're like, oh, wow, we could probably do that a lot better. So yeah, sorry, Chris just reminded me of that. And it's totally right, man. Like, just experience it yourself. Like, it's hard to have empathy if you've been onboarding other people. So yeah, go get onboarded, make a fake account and do it for real, and see like, oh, wow, you have to enter your password 4 times. That's probably not very good. So
ask a service desk tech to look over their shoulder or how they do a ticket. I had somebody do an account ticket in front of me the other day, and I said, I don't know how to do these anymore. They used to be my bread and butter, and I'm so far removed from it. I was like, there's a new tool? I'm the guy in charge of the tools. I don't even know.
Right.
Yeah, there's really nothing to add. No, they hit right on it. That's exactly right. I am a big proponent of the knowledge piece and what you might use for training, and just ongoing. Hey, this is how you do X, Y, Z, which you absolutely forget, let alone, a week or 6 months to a year after you were told how to do it. And if you can't easily find it, through available knowledge, then you got to go ask somebody, and that's frustrating. There a bunch of our customers that had, and it's knowledge isn't about volume. It's about what's actually really pertinent. It doesn't need to be thousands of bits of knowledge, but whatever you have, you can just start there and you're guaranteed to get wins. The customers of ours that had some, when they had to go, remote and they were anticipating a lot of questions, they made sure they reminded them, hey, all of this has been at your fingertips and it's still right there. It was a lot smoother for those customers.
Very good points. Very good points. So This is all about the future of IT support and what's next. And we've been told for years now that machine learning and AI are going to turn us upside down. We have a question from the audience. Machine learning is a term we hear a lot about. Can you define machine learning? What does this term mean as it relates to the support industry? And are there any specific tools or examples you can share of maybe how machine learning is being used?
It's math. It's all just math. It's set theory. It's combinatorials. Like machine learning has existed since before computers, because machine as a more liberal term is a mathematical concept too. But when we talk about it in terms of IT, there's tons of cool stuff. There's a lot of products out there that will try to sell you everything. So do your vetting. They'll sell you, anything and you'll believe it. People principally talk about things like chatbots or virtual agents, which is, helping people get the support they need through an automated manner. Usually you hook that into your knowledge base, your ticketing system, things like that, where you can have it act as a virtual agent, somebody acting like your front lines or tier ones to help funnel the customer to the right place or give them a way to enter a ticket, check status of ticket, things like that. But some of the really cool areas you start to see with the use of machine learning and all of this is actually better KPIs or metrics or just data about what's going on. So I actually have some papers published in this for my PhD research where we did machine learning on all of our historic data. Think about how many tickets you get per year and how they just sit there. You could data warehouse them, maybe you report on them and go, yeah, we did this many last year, this many this year. But what about the content, the body, the back and forth emails, the descriptions and the journal notes and all of those sorts of things? We actually ran machine learning on that and extracted all the keywords, and then we used that type of thing to match it to the classification in the service catalog. And then we took the skills needed for that and matched it to the skills the technicians have with some knowledge swarming. And that's the sort of thing that I'm doing in PhD land, but you'll start seeing that in consumer products. I actually think a few products even have auto classification, things like that. But the idea behind it is you can just process huge amounts of data that a human really can't. That's where it's really powerful. It looks for trending, it looks for matching, and it looks for commonalities between things. I want to say it's code. It is all code. It is just a different type of code that is running repeated processes. There is not a Terminator sitting there. Skynet is not making decisions about where your ticket should go to. But it's really cool stuff. You're doing math on big data.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the difference, right? So for your typical chatbot, it's being programmed to, when you say, hey, how many holidays do we have off this year? It says this many, and these are the dates. It's pre-programmed. The difference with machine learning is that it should be, if it's true machine learning, it should be learning at the same time automatically without human intervention. But the implementations of those are really few and far between at this point. It costs quite a bit, and it is still a lot of effort. I think the machine learning and AI's impact, though, on support and the future of it, I think it's an opportunity. Again, it's an opportunity. So if you look at just a simple example, right? You've got a bunch of incidents that are being submitted with certain characteristics, right? Then it should be able to identify that and automatically create a problem and automatically make sure that when the incidents are resolved, that automatically all the affected users are notified, right? Rather than, a little bit more manual intervention that may be required in a tool you're using today. So it's an opportunity, to optimize and improve things and service for your users. I think, one thing you want to consider if you go down that path is why are we doing it? What's the business outcome that we're trying to achieve? Otherwise, doing it just for the sake of it, it's not going to result in what you want.
Yeah, that's very well said. The call I had before this, we actually were talking about that very thing, like implementing the super expensive AI solution or any kind of solution, and then like, what problem were you gonna solve with that? I don't know. No, it's a new technology. Cool, but you haven't automated how to onboard an employee. Let's start there, right? But I mean, my learnings from we implemented like an AI platform that had like NLP, which was natural language processing, which is yet another acronym to add to the acronym soup of this whole world. But I mean, it was the 15th vendor that I had gone deep with before I found one, and the rest were just smoke and mirrors. And like, it took me a year, just like vendor after vendor. And I even started the call with the company we ended up with saying like, listen, I got a hard stop in 10 minutes. I'm just here to check a box. And they ended up actually having some good tech, but it's expensive and it's a lot. So while that's cool, I think if we're thinking about, you know, these new technologies coming in, computers are becoming good at these repetitive tasks, which is great because that's the boring stuff we don't want to do anyways. What computers are not good at is empathy, nuance, other things like that. So like, and I always think about like, I always study these world-class teams and try to say, you know, what are the differences between teams that, you know, are truly world-class versus teams that talk about it and are not. And it has nothing to do with technology. You know what it is? They're fun. They're good. They have good internal processes, so they're efficient. But yeah, like look at your team. Are they like grumpy? Are you not letting them go for a walk? You know, like have a fun team, you know, and really focus on that people aspect and learn about the business. Like how many people, you know, come to work for IT and they don't have time to sit there and have an espresso and, you know, read about the industry. They're just crunching tickets from, you know, dawn till dusk. Learn about the business, you know, and if your team is fun, having fun, and can tell you and articulate what IT's value is to the business, which ask your team today, and I guarantee you most of them will, you know, have interesting answers for that. If you really understand how the business works, you're going to be good. And, you know, let the AI will get better and replace the boring stuff, but don't just sit there and wait for them to catch you up. Do the stuff that they can't do. And I think, you know, IT should be fun. This job is really hard. If you're not having a blast at work, you're going to go nuts. So, you know, it sounds like, you know, fluffy language, but it's really not. Look at your team. If they're not having fun at work, like, you know, close down the call center for 30 minutes and like have a talk and figure it out. That would be my advice.
Very good. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left. So I want to follow that up with, as we move to implement these technologies from a customer experience and an employee experience perspective, what's the trick to getting people to try and stick with us probably the first time when it doesn't work perfectly and try it again? Any tips or ideas just real quick in the last minute or so?
Make it easier than the alternatives. It's the number one there is if emailing is still going to be easier, if it doesn't add value to them, they're never going to use anything else.
Totally. Yeah,
Easier.
there's one more cheat around that. First of all, do what that said, because that's important. Like, don't be like, oh, our users are so stupid. They want to use the wrong form of communication. No, it should be awesome and intuitive. Another thing that we did, which is fun, just throw beta on it. Like we threw stuff out and throw beta on it. And it's, you know, then you're saying like, hey, this is an experiment, you know, try it out. You get your early adopters. And then the magic word, the third time, test it. You know, if people don't like it, don't make them use it, you know, make something cool. And, you know, it might take 5 times, but if you throw a little beta on there, you can be like, hey, we're finally out of beta. On the 6th try, we have a great new contact channel for you. So don't be afraid to test and try and call it a beta.
No, I like that. And I'd say also just keep the scope super small. You know, if you boil the ocean, it's going to make it a lot more challenging for you. But if you say, hey, to your users, we're solving this one thing, and then you do it extremely well, then you've succeeded. And then you move to the next and the next. So you don't need to do a whole heck of a lot. You know, that's where you get in trouble.
Wonderful. Well, so I think what I picked up from today's talk is that the future of IT service and support involves a lot of testing.
Hopefully.
Wonderful. Well, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much to EasyVista for sponsoring and making this session possible. That concludes today's session. Thank you all for attending Support World Virtual. For those of you who want to get connected, be sure to check out thinkhdI.com later and check out HDI Connect and our articles and reach out and network with all of our panelists today. They would all appreciate the invitation from you, and we'd all love to connect with you. This webcast is copyright 2020 by Informatech. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by HDI, which is solely responsible for its content. Individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. Have a great day, and I hope that you'll join us again soon. See you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye-bye.